Welcome to session 25 of Through the Bible in 90 Days. Today we will look at three takeaways from 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 38 through 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 20. How obedience to God's commands in worship reflect our devotion to him, how idolatry leads to spiritual destruction and judgment, and how the failure of leaders to walk in God's commands affect not only themselves, but the entire community. I'm Dr. J. David Taylor. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. Let's get started. Takeaway 1. Obedience to God's commands in worship reflect our devotion to him. So in 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 38 to 51, the detailed descriptions of the bronze vessels and other items used in the temple highlight the importance of obedience to God's commands and how his temple is constructed and how worship is to be carried out. Now, God had given them and has specific instructions on how he wants to be worshiped. And it's a reminder that worship is not only a matter of the heart, but also a matter of following God's prescribed way. So similarly, believers today, worship is central to our relationship with God, and we are called to honor him through obedient lives that reflect his holiness and his commands, following his instructions. The scripture says, and the pots and the shovels and the basins and the vessels which Hiram made to King Solomon for the house of the Lord were of bright brass, 1 Kings 7:45. And the scripture further says, so was ended all the work that King Solomon made for the house of the Lord, 1 Kings 7:51. Takeaway 2. Idolatry leads to spiritual destruction and judgment. Now, in 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 25 to 33, Jeroboam, fearing the loss of his kingdom, sets up golden calves, get this, in Bethel and Dan, encouraging them to worship them. Now, this act of idolatry leads Israel further away from God, despite their earlier covenant with him. Now, God warns Israel repeatedly that following idols and rejecting his commands would result in judgment and destruction. Now, for us today, this serves as a warning against anything in our lives that may take the place of God, whether it be money, whether it be power, whether it be relationships, or even personal success. So when we allow these things to become idols, we turn away from the true source of life and invite spiritual destruction. The scripture says this, and Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah, and he offered upon the altar, 1 Kings 12:32. The scripture further said just a little before that, whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Takeaway 3. The failure of leaders to walk in God's commands affect not only them, but the entire community. Now, in 1 Kings 13, the disobedience of Jeroboam and his subsequent judgment serves as a stark reminder that the impact of leadership decisions have on the whole nation. Now, when leaders fail to follow God's commands, the consequences are far-reaching, affecting the people they lead. This truth is evident not only in the lives of Israel's kings, but in the lives of leaders today, whether in the church, at work, or in government. Leaders must walk in integrity and obedience to God. Their failure to do so brings harm to those they lead, while their faithfulness brings blessings to those they lead. The scripture says this, and he cried against the altar in the word of the Lord and said, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name. And upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. 1 Kings 13:2. The scripture further goes on to say, and so it was charged me by the word of the Lord, saying, eat no bread, nor drink water, nor turn again by the way that thou camest. 1 Kings 13:9. So what does it really mean to truly honor God with our lives? In 1 Kings chapter 7, we see the details of construction of God's temple, designed, listen to me now, precisely according to God's command. Yet, in the very next chapter, we see the failure of Israel's leadership as King Jeroboam sets up idols in defiance of God's will. Now, this contrast presents a clear picture for us today. Honoring God, my friend, is not just about ritual or outward acts, but about the condition of our hearts and our obedience to God's commands. So what happens when we choose to honor something or someone else more than God? The failure to honor God in our hearts, as seen through the actions of Israel's leader, has far-reaching consequences. Jeroboam's decision to establish idols in Israel did not only affect him, but it led the entire nation into sin, and it led the entire nation into rebellion against God. And just as God commanded his people to honor him in every detail of worship, he calls us to honor him with our obedience in every area of our lives. See, the real issue is whether we are choosing to live lives that fully honor God, or whether we are subtly allowing idols to take root in our hearts. What if we saw our obedience to God's commands not as a burden, but as a true act of worship that keeps us aligned with his purposes? Because see, worship is not just about singing or rituals. It is about obedience. It is about reverence and trust in God's way. Jeroboam's choice to disregard God's command to worship only him resulted in tragic consequences, not only for himself, but once again, his entire nation. So let's change our mindset. Instead of seeing God's commands as restrictive, let's see them as the foundation of a life lived in alignment with God's good and perfect will. When we choose to honor God in every aspect, choose, ladies and gentlemen, to honor him in every aspect of our lives, we actually invite his blessings and protections. So this today is your call to action. I'm asking you, will you honor God fully with your life? Will you ensure that there are no idols, no false gods or misplaced priorities in your hearts or in your actions? It's so easy to let the distractions of this world pull us away from wholehearted devotion to God. But true freedom is found in surrender to God's commands. And just as Israel's leaders were accountable for their choices, we too must be accountable for how we live. Let's choose to honor God with our hearts. Let's choose to honor God with our time. And let's choose to honor God with our acts, trusting that he will guide and bless us as we obey his will. I challenge you today. Will you honestly commit to honoring God fully with every area of your life starting today? Will you examine your heart and ask God earnestly to reveal any idols you may have unknowingly allowed to take place, or better still, to take his place? True worship is not just about what we do, my friend. It's about who we really are. I challenge you again. It's time to realign our hearts wholeheartedly with God's purposes, choosing to live lives that fully reflect his glory. And please don't wait for tomorrow. Take this step today to honor God with all that you are? Will you answer the call? I have 3 personal declarations reflecting my willingness to align with God's divine will. I'm telling you, my friends, I declare that I will honor God fully, because that's how I want him to show it for me. I will honor God fully with my heart, with my actions, and obedience to his commandment. I declare that I will keep my heart free from idols, choosing to worship and serve God alone. And I declare that I will be a faithful leader in my sphere of influence, seeking to lead by example and align my life with God's will. My time is up. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. J. David Taylor. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you next time.